Soundboard is a production of the Austin Audio Lab.
Sound recording makes its way to space. We help you imagine what it would sound like to get there. It's all happening now on Soundboard with Mark and Gabe.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Soundboard. Soundboard is an audio production podcast hosted by myself, Mark Stelter, and man recently voted Best Human by his dog Clementine, Gabe Alvarez.
On today's episode, Mark will be taking you out of the past and into the future of recorded sound with part 2 of his History of Recording series.
And as recorded sound returns to us from the Martian surface, Gabe breaks down what a spaceship voyage to Mars might sound like. So with that, let's count down and blast off.
3, 2, 1.
On the last episode of Soundboard, I talked about the early developments in sound recording, from the recovered wavelengths of Edouard Léon Scott de Martinville to wax cylinders refined by Alexander Graham Bell's Volta Laboratory, all the way up to the commercialization of flat shellac discs in the 1920s that resemble the vinyl records we are familiar with today. But before we continue on into the modern era, I wanted to first give a little more context to the introduction of the gramophone and those shellac records. Now, as I briefly touched on last time, Emil Berliner, a German immigrant to the United States in 1870, first invented and patented the gramophone in 1887, which utilized the flat circular discs we're now accustomed to. While his initial patent described using cylinder recording similar to the phonograph, Berliner opted to use the flat disc method in practice, as they were easier to reproduce in large quantities. So in 1888, Berliner used a recording method in which a stylus traced a line through a very thin coating of wax on a zinc disc, which was then etched into acid to convert the line of bared metal into a playable groove. These then master discs could then be stamped and reproduced on materials such as hard rubber. These gramophone records would be the primary competition to Edison's phonograph cylinders up through 1929, when the flat disc approach eventually came out on top once the cost of materials allowed their production to be more cost-effective. Think of it as the competition between Betamax and VHS tapes. Or if that's too old of a reference for you, the competition between HD, DVD, and Blu-ray. And if that's too old of a reference for you, well,
how do you do, fellow kids?
Now, there would be several more major developments through the 1930s and 40s, including the introduction of stereo sound, as well as both 4- and 8-track recording methods. But the next real big change would occur in 1948 with the introduction of commercially viable vinyl records. There were two competing formats, the LP, or long play, and EP, or extended play. LPs are 12 inches in diameter and run at a speed of 33.5 RPM, or revolutions per minute, whereas EPs are 7 inches in diameter and run at a slightly faster speed of 45 revolutions per minute. For a fun experiment, most modern turntables allow for a selection between both speeds, so if you have one available, try playing a larger LP at 45 RPM or a smaller EP at 33.5 RPM. Get ready for some
Alvin and the Chipmunk sounds, or
totally worth it. Trust me. Now, while LPs and EPs initially competed directly against one another, the two formats would eventually diverge into their own markets. LPs were able to store more sound, roughly 25 minutes per side, but were more expensive than EPs. EPs, on the other hand, were cheaper, but could only hold about 7.5 minutes per side. LPs would be the predominant way to record full albums, and EPs could act as samplers or singles. If you've ever wondered where the term hit single came from, you can thank the EP. As you might be able to tell at this point, there is a significant lag between the invention of a new recording medium and the ability for it to become commercially available to most people. As such, the vinyl record would continue to dominate the recording industry throughout the 1970s, even though both 8-track and cassette tapes were actually first introduced in the 1960s. But part of their development and success would actually stem from the booming automotive industry at the time that was able to install the compact playback devices into cars. Tapes would be the go-to choice for listening on the go. However, unlike the competition between LPs and EPs, 8-track tapes would eventually be outclassed by the utility and overall improvement of sound quality from cassette tapes by 1983. As we approach the modern era, we now arrive in recording territory that you might be familiar with. In a similar flurry of invention to the late 1800s and early 1900s, we see the invention of CDs, MP3s, and fully digital recording in a very short time frame. The first patent for a device resembling the CD would be granted to American inventor James Russell in 1970, and his approach harkened back to the very first recorded sounds of Martin Ville's phonautograph over 100 years prior. Similar to Martin Ville's phonautograph, using a vibrating stylus to record a sound wave onto a piece of glass coated in soot, Russell's invention used a photosensitive platter to capture binary code in lightened and darkened intervals, which could then be read by a computer, converted into an electrical signal, and then be played back. The first commercially available CD player, the CDP-101, would be released by Sony in 1982, and with continued improvement in digital sound encoding throughout the 1980s, the CD would lead the market for audio recordings by 1991. At the same time, a man named Karl-Heinz Brandenburg was in the process of developing the MP3 format as one of the first digital audio files that could be easily and cheaply decoded. Now that we have the ability to record digitally, as well as the commercial viability of a digital audio file in the MP3, digital audio workstations, or DAWs, would rival the magnetic tape recording process of the previous generation. In fact, I'm using a DAW right now in the form of Reaper, and there are many other options available, from Pro Tools to Ableton to GarageBand and others. And this basically brings us up to date with how sound is actually recorded and processed. Of course, the CD has gone the way of the cassette today, and streaming services are a very popular medium to listen to audio production, but the nuts and bolts of digital recording have been fairly solidified. However, the application of digital recording recently made history again by the capture of audio from NASA's Perseverance rover and its successful landing on Mars. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about how cool that is, because the Perseverance is equipped with 2 microphones, one included in its SuperCam system, which is currently in the process of running operational diagnostics for its data collection mission, and another that might surprise you. First off, the SuperCam system is a major part of the rover that is going to be used for rock and soil analysis of the Martian surface. The inbuilt microphone provides another tool that can help scientists determine the exterior coating of Martian rocks in what might be the coolest way possible. The rover is going to record the sound of rocks exploding as they are hit with a laser. Seriously, it's recording laser sound microexplosions. But in addition to the SuperCam system, the second microphone is actually a commercially available product called the 4006 omnidirectional microphone, made by a Danish company called DPA Microphones. The microphone is mounted on the exterior of the rover and connected to a MMA-A digital audio interface on the interior. The MMA-A's job is to digitize audio recordings in the highest quality and send it to a computer in the rover through a USB connection. And that's it. Other than some tweaks in mounting and location, no other changes were made. A microphone that you can buy yourself if you wanted to just went to Mars and successfully captured sound of the surface. And this all happened within the span of 164 years. The entirety of recorded sound in 164 years. I'm sure the process of digital recording will continue to be refined as the years go on, but could something entirely new replace it, just as many other recording methods have been overtaken since Martin Ville's phonautograph? Only time, curiosity, and perseverance will tell.
Last episode, I built my own blaster sounds from scratch. And while I captured that experience, today, I wanted to document the process of designing a sound. So today, I'm making a spaceship. I'm going to walk you through my process for creating this sound sequence, from the actual sounds I used to the ideas that directed me. By the end of this episode, I think you'll have a pretty good idea of my creative process when it comes to something like this, and hopefully have the tools to go out and make your own spaceship sounds. But we're gonna have to change the mood first. Now, when I sat down to do this, I only knew two things. I wanted to make a spaceship sound, and I wanted to use sounds I already had. But what kind of ship am I making? Are we landing or flying by? Are we in space? Are we on a planet? I had no idea what I was trying to make. I didn't know. I just knew that I wanted to make a spaceship, and I had no plan outside of that. So, having no idea ultimately what I'm trying to create means I have no idea where to start. And I think that when you have no idea where to start, you just have to start experimenting. So I went into our industrial sound pack and I grabbed the first ceiling fan that I saw. And, it's fine. It's the ceiling fan, it's pretty boring. But it made sense. The fan, the mechanical, it's a spaceship. But I know I want to use multiple layers to make this ship, and this is way too much low end for me. So I ran a high pass filter and I attenuated everything under 100 hertz. And that sounds better. I want to get rid of that sound at the bottom. And yeah, I don't know, we could be inside the ship. We could be, I don't know yet. I just know it needs more. So I go back and I grab my trusty vacuum cleaner. I love this sound. It's got that, it sounds like engines or turbines or something. I cut everything over 1,000 hertz. I want to get rid of that needly high. I don't need so much of that high end on this. I want to roll it off. I want it kind of round. That sounds pretty cool. Then you layer them up. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere. What ends up really grabbing me about the vacuum cleaner clip is the tail end. It's got this great spin down, and there's like a musicality to it as it... I have to use it. I gotta use it. And then it hits me. This ship is landing. And as I'm trying to reconceptualize the direction here, I realize there is a musicality to it. It's hitting a note. It's pretty close to like an A natural. It's not exact, it's pretty close. So, since I'm designing a ship that's flying in and landing, we're gonna need something really thick in the low end for when it gets up close. It's gonna need to have some serious presence to it. So I pull up a synth and I hit a really ugly cluster chord. If the vacuum cleaner is hitting an A natural, I wanna kinda add around that. So I play A flat, B flat, and B natural. My thinking is that this dissonant chord and this kind of nasty little synth, it's gonna give like a technological element. I've got two mechanical pieces already in place. Got the ceiling fan, I got the vacuum cleaner. So this kind of digital synthesized sound is gonna give like a future techno vibe to it. To blend it in, I rolled off everything over 1,000 hertz and you just ended up with this grumble. And when you put it all together, okay, all right, this is cool for a start, but I need perspective. I need some motion. I need a sense of what I'm working with. So I automated the volume, the panning, and the pitch to evaluate how the new sound was coming. And it's pretty cool. All right, I know I'm headed in the right direction because I think it sounds cool. but it's also flat. You know, there's not a lot going on. It's very basic. There's no texture. There's no interest. It needs more. I ran outside and I grabbed some recordings in my car. What I specifically wanted to find and add was something to the landing part of the sequence. You know, the ship is going to come in and it lands, and as I have it set up, just kind of where the pieces fall right now, it just kind of stops. So I wanted to add a little bit of something there. So I figured turning off the engine and you hear that, add that, kind of patch it up. You know, there's something, there's a little interest right there. I hear the rest of the clip after I pitched it down, and it's like the car sounds amazing, this engine sounds amazing. I gotta use it. So I go back to the ship baseline and I start over again, and I yada yada yada, get back up to speed, and here's where we are now. It sounds pretty cool, but it needs more. I've got a ship, this heavy duty ship. It flies in and it's but I don't hear the context of it coming in and landing, so it needs some landing gears. It needs some maneuvering thrusters while it, you know, comes down on the landing pad. So I go back to the industrial sound pack and I grab the metal hatch sounds. I got these from a trash bin in a state park. They're gonna be great. And I also grabbed some white noise from a helicopter air vent. I took the air vent, I pitched it up, automated some random pitch adjustments from there, and then I chopped it up. I wanted to get a sense of motion, a sense of, you know, something big and heavy, and it's coming in low, and it's trying to do these little precise adjustments. I need to... So I end up with this. I think it sounds cool. To cut through the engine sounds a little better, I just boosted the high end, kind of dropped off everything that was low. And then I went back, and then I took the metal hatch sounds. I raised the gain, dropped the pitch way low, roll off the high end, and these come out. They're ugly, they're harsh. I just mash them together, really Frankenstein, just on a really ugly background texture. And it's okay, because I don't care, it's a background texture. This is the ship buckling or shifting or something. It's gonna be washed out by all the heavy engine sounds and all that stuff. I just need the texture. I need the sense that there is something big and something real operating in space. And suddenly it occurs to me that I need some more buckling metal. I need a way to know that the landing gear is coming out, that this ship is flying in and it's hovering and it's getting ready to touch down. So I run to the garage and I open the garage door a couple of times. I'm not really concerned that this sounds very obviously like a garage door opening. I drop the pitch and suddenly it's got a new personality. I'm loving this dynamic moaning and groaning of the motor mechanism. There's like these random squeaks underneath it. They're perfect. So I grab 2 of those door opening sequences and I add them to the ship scene. They don't cut through the mix very much, and that's good. It's almost like I went back and added like a gesso to my canvas before I put the paint back on it. And I like that. I like the way it sounds, I like the way it's going. But it needs more. I'm still not hearing the landing gear, which was the whole point of doing all of this, and I need that to come through. I would love some kind of long hydraulic whine. I want to hear some kind of servo assembly deploying these gears. You know, I really want to... You know, just imagine landing gears coming out. You hear that hydraulic whine. I can't think of anything around my house that I have that would provide that kind of sound. So I go back to my vacuum cleaner. I pitch it down, roll off the high and low frequencies, and I end up with this. All right. Throwing that into the landing sequence, we get this. And it sounds okay, but it's still missing something. I'm not sure exactly what it needs, but I know it needs something. So I do a little experimenting. I take another pass at my garage door track. The engines I already designed are pretty solid, I think, in terms of their presence in the mix, so I want to break this up a little bit. So first, I add some auto panning to get this shutter effect. And I like it. I think it's cool. I'm starting to believe that this is an actual functional piece of equipment. I end up tweaking the rate of the auto pan and automating the pitch to really lock down this feeling of the heavy machinery shutting down, and I think I captured that pretty well. And doing that gives me an idea. So I grab my vacuum cleaner again, I pitch it way up, automate some pitch adjustments, add the shutter effect, and I start characterizing the ship's approach. All of my pitch adjustments so far have given us that Doppler effect of a vehicle approaching, which is nice, but I want something that grabs your attention as soon as the clip starts. And it needs more. I know it, you know it. This ship doesn't even touch the ground. I need to hear a big thud as this thing touches down. So I go to my original field recordings from when I tried to make blasters. I go to the rejected pile of sounds, which was a hammer on a slack telephone wire. Oh yeah, immediately, I know this is it. I grab a few of those, I layer them together, a little offset from each other, drop the pitch way down. Perfect. I add this in, and it's done. One fully designed sound sequence wrapped up and in the bag, using only sounds I collected myself, using things around my house or around my neighborhood. Hopefully this gives you some ideas when it comes to producing your own sounds or navigating your own creative process. If you decide to design any ship sounds of your own, we would love to hear them. Tag us on Twitter @AustinAudioLab and let us know what you've created. And if you're curious to hear more sounds that we've worked on, go ahead and check out the links in today's show notes or on our blog at austinaudiolab.com.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Soundboard. And if you couldn't tell by now, we both love space. Space is the place. So, Elon, if you're listening, we're available.
You can find links to the gear we used, the sources we referenced, and the sounds we made for today's episode in the show notes or on our blog at austinaudiolab.com. This is the Austin Audio Laboratory, signing off for now.